Executive Director, happy to welcome you all to the 34th Common Ground Fair, and we're going to do our keynote in just a minute. Thank you. Yesterday was just under 16,000 with a nice rainy start to the morning, and I think we're going to see a few more people here today. So remember to get out and around while you still can move. Today's talk is our keynote talk is on slow money, as you might be able to read in front of me. So what is this that we're talking about? I'm actually not going to answer that question. I'm going to say that I think what LAFCA has been doing for decades, though, is really at the heart of what this slow money conversation is all about. Connecting people, connecting farmers with eaters in creative and constructive ways. And we are really lucky both to have Woody Tasch here today, kind of the founder and spark plug for the slow money movement. But we're also lucky that at 2 o'clock we're going to have a conversation for Slow Money Maine for people who are interested in talking about what's going on right here in the state in the what used to be called the railroad car tent, which is basically right behind that striped tent over my right shoulder. So right over here, 2 o'clock, for people who want to have a more engaged or one-on-one conversation. There's also a website up, slowmoneymaine.org, where you can kind of catch up on with what's going on. So I've been fortunate enough to hear Woody 2, maybe 3 times in the last year since his book on slow money came out. In Farmington, over in Vermont, and on the radio. He's kind of ubiquitous right now because he's got an idea that resonates. He's been working with investors for years on ways to put their money where their heart is. And now this has really become a nationwide and even international conversation about how we're going to create the kind of world that we want. So please join me in welcoming Woody Tasch. Do not egg me on. I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to try. So, how's the sound? Good? I was asked to. We good on the sound? So it's funny that Russ said something about putting your money where your heart is, because I saw a t-shirt a few minutes ago that said put your money where your mouth is. And that is what this is all about. I mean, it's but not just your consumer dollars. I mean, if I was trying to get to the bottom line of what, or the punchline, it's one thing to use your consumer dollars better. It's another thing to use your investment dollars better. And if we had time, we get into a conversation like, where are all your investment dollars? That'd be a depressing conversation, I believe, because they're not invested in all this. Your investment dollars are not invested. How many people have investment dollars invested in all this? Whoa. All right, well, it's pretty good. I think 3, no, maybe 5. So, yeah, I guess, again, just jumping to the bottom of the slow money discussion, I mean, for me, it's very, very simple. It's if our money, meaning our money as a society, is streaming up smokestacks in China, which is basically what it's doing if you oversimplify. It's all invested in the very thing that we're all here today to celebrate the antidote to, right? But our investment dollars are still streaming around the planet, going as fast as possible, promoting economic growth in China. And that may be why we're not having a depression here right now. It's a pretty, let's get all the bad stuff out of the way first. You're supposed to laugh. Okay, wait a minute. This got way too serious. All right, so first I'm going to do a, let's see, okay, a joke. I'm going to do a joke. I wasn't going to do this, but I can see that I have nobody's attention yet, and I have to do a joke. I'm going to do a joke, then I'm going to do a cartoon, in case the joke doesn't work. Then, after the cartoon, I'm going to, usually I've been traveling around speaking a lot about this, and so I just pay attention to what I'm reading. So I just wanted to share a few little anecdotes or things that I just happened to read on the way here that are pertinent to the discussion. Then I'm going to tell you what Slow Money is doing. We do have an organization. We have 1,200 members around the country. We have 12,000 people who've signed the Slow Money Principles. We've been holding meetings. I'm really, really pleased to be able to say, so how many people here know that we had a meeting in Shelburne, Vermont, Shelburne Farms, Vermont in June? Probably a bunch of you. How many people were there, actually? Anybody there? A couple of hands. So since June, just to get to a numbers thing, a money thing, because this is a money discussion,
Over $1 million has been invested by people who are in the tent with us in Shelburne Farms in 7 of the companies that presented in Shelburne Farms, and that's just the beginning. There's going to be a lot more than that before we're finished. That's not a brag or anything, it's just to let you know that we are in motion here. So I'm going to say a bunch of far-fetched things about money and culture and a lot of other things, but we are actually doing it. Okay, so the joke. Yes?
Yeah.
Please, beg me. So let's see, a rabbi, a Hindu priest, and a hedge fund manager are driving along late at night, ostensibly somewhere in Kansas, we don't know where. They're lost and it's dark and they see a light on in the distance and they drive up the drive to this farmhouse. And the Hindu priest gets out of the car, and you have to imagine an Indian accent. And he knocks on the door. Farmer comes to the door and he says, the priest says, "I'm really sorry to bother you, but we're terribly, terribly lost. Would it be okay if we slept in the car here in the driveway?" And the farmer says, "Well, my kids are away at school. I got 2 empty beds in the house. 2 of you come in the house. And the 3rd one go in the barn, sleep on the hay. It's way more comfortable than the car." So the Hindu priest says, "No problem, no problem." Remember, Indian accent, it helps. "I'll go into the barn with the animals." And he goes into the barn. The rabbi and the hedge fund manager go to sleep. 5 minutes later, there's a knock on the door. It's the Hindu priest. And he says, "I'm very sorry, you didn't tell me that you have a cow in the barn. And cows are holy in my religion, and it's really not okay for me to sleep near the cow." So now Yiddish accent, the rabbi says, hey, no problem, no problem. I won't have any problem with the cow. Let's switch places." Everybody still there? How many people are into slow money so far? No. All right. Well, we try to. Money is a serious topic, so it's good to have a sense of humor. So they switch places. The rabbi goes to sleep in the barn. 5 minutes later, knock on the door. It's the rabbi. The rabbi says with the Yiddish accent, "I'm really sorry, you didn't tell me that you have a pig in the barn." And he said, "Pigs aren't holy in our religion, but we have this kosher thing. I'm not sure I really feel that." So the hedge fund manager, no accent, says, expletive, expletive, "Can we please, expletive, expletive, go to sleep? I won't have any problem with the expletive animals. Let's all switch places." That was instead of cursing, I said expletive, by the way, for this. So they switch places, confident what could possibly go wrong. 5 minutes later, there's a knock on the door. It was the cow and the pig. All right, now how many people are into, no. All right. So I said I was going to do, that was the joke. Here's the cartoon. Moving from the ridiculous to the slightly less ridiculous. Or should I say from the true to the even more true. So here's a cartoon from the New York. This is actually, if I had a slide, I'd be able to put some on a PowerPoint. This is an actual New Yorker cartoon from about 40 years ago, and I just want you to picture this cartoon, and I'll tell you the caption. The picture is a few dozen middle-aged white guys in business suits and top hats and attaché cases, business hats, all looking in the distance where one of them is pointing like this, and they're outside in a field like today. You can see they're all pointing. One guy's pointing, they're all staring. And the caption is, "Business leaders gathered recently in a field in Darien, Connecticut, where one of them claims to have seen the invisible hand of the marketplace." Got to think about that one a little bit. Now, what I love about that cartoon is it was 40 years old. I mean, when that was put in there, I don't know what they were thinking when they put that in there, but it's not that funny anymore. Right now, everyone's kind of going like this, where did it go, you know? I guess you can tell from that cartoon and that joke that slow money is not just let's say, a how-to thing about, let's say, how to do some new form of social investing. I mean, it is actually that, but it's starting from a much bigger question, which is, how did we get so far out of whack? You know, how did we get so far down the path of, let's say, the invisible hand, that to even ask the question? I mean, if I stay here and say, how many people think it's a revolution if 1 million Americans invest 1% of their money in local food systems? How many people think that qualifies as a revolution? I see some guy going, "Oh, that's not much of a revolution." I mean, so it depends. I mean, it shouldn't be a revolution. What could be more kind of pitiful than that? 1 million Americans, that's maybe a couple of percent of the investing public. Some number, maybe there might be 60 or 70 million Americans have money in the stock market. So 1 million of them investing say 1 million of us, not them, 1 million of us, investing 1% of our money directly into small food enterprises near where we live. How could that possibly be a revolution? The only way that could be a revolution is if we are so far off the track that the most obvious common sense thing seems revolutionary. we are really far off the track. How far off the track are we? Someone might have just wondered. There's a lot of different numbers we could get into to say how far off the track we are. So here's one of the articles I read on the way here. I was going to tell you about a few of the articles. So there was an article in the New York Times, I think it was yesterday, about Bill Gates and Warren Buffett going to China. A bunch of you may have seen this article. They've been in the news a lot lately. They are running around promoting the idea that billionaires should give away half of their money. Centimillionaires and billionaires should commit. They have a program called the Giving Pledge. They want people to commit to giving away half of their money. Now, you can't say that's a bad thing, right? I mean, we want people to have a lot of money to give more of it away. I mean, again, I would happen to think that we should add to that. We should also be investing our money differently, but that's another part of the equation. But the reason I'm mentioning is that they're going to China to promote this idea in China, and the press has been making a little bit of a kerfuffle because evidently only 2 people in China have agreed to meet with them so far. And so they're all, raising a question about, is America more generous than China, and is this just a publicity stunt to embarrass the Chinese, blah, blah, blah. So we always hear that America is a very generous country. And relative to other nations in terms of the amount of money we give away, that's true. Anybody want to guess? Somebody here probably knows this, but if people want to guess how much money American individuals give away every year? Just individual charity that we all give directly ourselves to local groups and schools and churches and whatever. Anybody want to guess what the number is? Come on. You gotta have a guess. It's more than $1 million. Come on. No, not a single guess? All right, maybe. How much? $1 billion? $230 billion. 230. Let's do a little math here. $230 billion. How many people think that's a lot of money? That was a trick question. You have to say compared to what? Everything is compared to what? Like what's fast, what's slow compared to what? All right, what's it compared to? It's compared to our GDP, which might be $15 trillion. Approximate rough number. Right? So what is that? It's maybe 2% of GDP. Maybe. It's probably more like 1.5% of our total economic output was given by individuals as charity. So is that a lot or little? Let's hold that thought. How much money, I'll do another one. How much money was given by professionally managed foundations in the United States to sustainable agriculture groups? This is kind of a crazy thing to ask as a random question. We have 1 billion. Do we have a much lower number in the audience? Just like a reverse auction. Zero. It might as well be zero. It's small enough to be rounded down to zero statistically. $50 million. Now let's just finish that one. This is all under the heading of, is philanthropy enough? I'm going to put a heading on this part of the talk. Is philanthropy enough? I'm going to try to convince you in a few minutes that philanthropy is not enough. $50 million a year going from organized foundations as grants to sustainable agriculture. The assets of these foundations, the money that they have invested, their assets as foundations, $500 billion. 50 million is 1/100 of a percent. 1/100 of a percent of the money that professional foundations in the U.S., private foundations, that includes Gates with their, whatever they are now, 50 billion or however they're counting their tens of billions now. So the point being, while 230 billion is, quote, a lot of money to compared to us on a daily basis, it's not a lot of money as a percentage of the economy. Here's another one. The $500 billion, I'm going to stop doing these kind of weird math things in a second. This is just in case you didn't appreciate the humor before. The $500 billion of foundation assets, if you say, is that a lot or a little? Geez, sounds like we got a lot of money in these foundations. Is that a lot or a little? And the answer is, it's really a small amount. Why? Think about the economic output of the 20th century in the United States that created that $500 billion of surplus put into these foundations. What was the total cumulative GDP of the United States in the 20th century? I don't actually know this exact number. Approximately $200 trillion. So $500 billion represents about 1/4%. All right. Now, just to get off of that, because it's kind of depressing and I can sense a lack of energy out there, I would just say philanthropy is not going to solve the problem. Now, there's a bunch of other reasons why philanthropy isn't going to solve the problem, like it depends on grants and NGOs spending like 80 hours a week running around begging for money, and it's just not sustainable. It's not a robust system. So if you think that the task, I'm going to jump kind of to the punchline of this whole thing. If the task is to try to, let's say, imagine that we're going to rebuild a sector of the economy around stuff like we're all here today to celebrate, and we're going to have it scale in some meaningful way, going from tiny fractions, like 1/100% of this and 1% of that, a few percent of that, to being a meaningful part of our economy. Again, where's the capital going to come from to do that? It's not going to come from foundations. There's a whole part of the discussion I haven't even mentioned about how foundations invest. We're not even going to get into that. Just the truth is, it's not going to come from foundations. It's going to have to come from us. It's going to have to come from millions of people taking a little of our money and putting it to work directly, buying farms and building processing plants and supporting restaurants that are sourcing locally and training new farmers and seed companies and all the things that we know that we want to see in our local economy. We need billions of dollars a year. You know, we're investing 10 or 20 or 30 billion dollars of venture capital in clean tech and all these things. And again, we're investing almost nothing in this economy. We're supporting it with our consumer dollars by doing all kinds of things, but we're not taking our investment capital and doing. So that's what slow money is all about, catalyzing that process. The simple way of thinking about what we're trying to do is to catalyze a whole series of products, services, networks that will make it easy for millions of Americans to invest a little of their money directly in local food systems within a decade. We're maybe in the second year of our undertaking, so we've set this as a goal for us in a decade. I think I'm going to let me do one other thing here. So I was talking about things that I read on the way here. I was reading The Economist on the way here. There's an article in The Economist about a coalition of major food companies. I didn't know anything about this. It's called something like the Healthy Weight Coalition. Something like. Does anybody know about this? Never heard of it. It's Pepsi, Kellogg, Kraft, and a couple of other major companies. I'm not making this up. This is under the heading of the part of the talk, you can't make this shit up. Right? You can't make this up. In the article, it says, these major food companies have committed to an agenda by 2015. They want to remove 1.5 trillion calories from the American food market. What the hell does that mean? First of all, you got to say, compared to what? I don't know what that number means, but so the reason that caught my eye is, and we could do a whole riff on numbers just in general, on trillions of this, trillions of that. There's a whole other part of this talk that I'm not going to do, which would be about how big the numbers have become. Nobody can understand them, including the investment bankers and everybody else. This is true. This is not bullshit. The smart investment bankers and economists, if they were here, they would be agreeing in public. They'd say, we can't control this anymore. We don't know what's going on. It's gotten way too big, way too fast. You remember when 1,000 point? How many people remember there was a 1,000-point drop in the stock market in 20 minutes about 2 or 3 months ago? Whatever happened? Kind of gone. We don't even talk about that anymore. Stuff like that's going to happen because the system is way too big, way too fast, way too interconnected, way too abstract. You know, the derivatives and subprime thing is just one shot across the bow. The system isn't changing. That system is not changing. It's, you know, adjusting, trying to react, When you have $3, $4, $5 trillion a day coursing through different sectors of the world markets, you are not going to be able to manage it. It's that simple. So this leads to this other thing that I happened to read, not on my way here, but it's from the Small Farm Journal. I'll bet most of you have seen this along the way, but I picked one up. And I'm not going to read you, in the interest of time, the paragraph that leads up to this comment. It's all about it's a litany of things that are wrong with industrial agriculture. And then the paragraph ends, and it says, and perhaps the most potentially deadly side effects of large-scale industrial-style agriculture, dash, a studied remoteness from the customer and lack of accountability that might be seen as indifference. Now, all the things that we know about you know, water, toxics, and loss of biodiversity, and salmonella, all these other things, that was all in the paragraph up above. And then the writer concluded that maybe the most deadly thing was remoteness from the customer and lack of accountability. Now, there was an article in the same issue of the New York Times that David Brooks wrote, and he was writing about the whole too big to fail thing. And the theme of the piece was exactly the same. The problem is no one's accountable to anyone else because everything is so big and complicated, there's no one to be accountable to. He happened to mention another number in that article, 100 million words. Here's another statistic. There are 100 million words in federal regulations of something or something. And I'm sure that isn't like all federal regulations. I'm sure it was just one piece. And he happened to mention that in this particular area, the regulators had to cope with 100 million words. So how are they ever going to make flexible decisions about anything? So again, if you bring this down to what we're here, if you bring it down to what we're here to talk about, if you apply it to organics, it doesn't matter how great your organic standards are. If it's federal government and it's being regulated from the top down, it is going to be a mess, right? There's just no way. It's a scale problem. It's too big to manage. It's not just too big to fail. It's too big to understand and manage. So I think you kind of get the point, and I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir here in that sense. And I would say the challenge is for those, let's say, on the investing side of the universe, people who are charged with managing money and managing our money, your money, professional investors, we have to create systems that will make it easy for them to start doing what many of us want them to do. So when you go and talk to your advisor there and go, that is the craziest thing ever, if you can't do that, you're going to lose your shirt. They would much rather lose money pushing trillions of dollars up smokestacks in China than they would make 1% a year investing in this stuff. That is the truth. That's a sad, because it's a very speculative environment, and it doesn't matter how many times you lose when you gamble. If you win once or twice, you just keep going back to the trough to gamble, and those are our money managers, our gamblers with our money. So anyhow, I didn't know I was going to stick on that rant that long. If you allow me, I'm going to read like a page from my book, just to give you an idea of the way the book catalyzes this conversation. Then I'm going to tell you what we're doing. Then I'm going to tell you what we're doing at Slow Money, give you an idea of the actual activities, and then hopefully we're going to talk a little bit and we'll have time for some questions. I'm hoping I will provoke some questions. All right. This section won't come as a surprise after what I just said, but I'm going to read it anyway. There is such a thing as money that is too fast. Money that is too fast is money that has become so detached from people, place, and the activities that it is financing that not even the experts understand it fully. Money that is too fast makes it impossible to say whether the world economy is going through a correction in the credit markets, triggered by the subprime mortgage crisis, or whether we are teetering on the edge of something much deeper and more challenging, tied to petrodollars, derivatives, hedge funds, futures, arbitrage, and a Byzantine hyper-securitized system of intermediation that no quant, no program trader, no speculator, no investment bank CEO can any longer fully understand or manage. Just as no one can say precisely where the meat in a hamburger comes from, it may contain meat from as many as hundreds of animals, no one can say where the money in this or that security has come from, where it is going, what is behind it, whether if it were to be stopped, in quotes, and like a hot potato held by someone for more than a few instants, it represents any intrinsic or real value. Money that is too fast creates an environment in which, when questioned by the press about the outcome of the credit crisis, this was at the very beginning. My book came out, it was right in like November 2008. The publication date was January 2009. So this is right at the beginning of the crisis. Someone questioned former Treasury Secretary Robert Rubin about how bad the crisis was going to be, and his answer was, quote, "No one knows," unquote. This kind of befuddlement is what arises when the relationships among capital, community, and bioregion are broken. And the last thing I want to read is a paragraph by David Orr, and I'll bet you a lot of you in this audience know David Orr, have read his stuff. But this is an amazing paragraph, so you have to think, listen carefully. There is an appropriate velocity for water set by geology, soils, vegetation, and ecological relationships in a given landscape. There is an appropriate velocity for money that corresponds to long-term needs of communities rooted in particular places and to the necessity of preserving ecological capital. There is an appropriate velocity for information set by the assimilative capacity of the mind and by the collective learning rate of communities and entire societies. Having exceeded the speed limits, this is all still David Orr, we are vulnerable to ecological degradation, economic arrangements that are unjust and unsustainable, and in the face of great and complex problems, to befuddlement that comes with information overload. So we could discuss that for a long time, but if you just think about appropriate velocity of water, appropriate velocity of information, appropriate velocity of money, and of course until the last couple of years, no sophisticated investor would have ever said there's such a thing as money that's too fast. And most people don't think there's such a thing as information that's too fast. But I don't know how many of you saw there was a big article in the Atlantic a couple of years ago that said, "Is Google making us stupid?" And how many, it's not an unfettered good having this fire hose of information coming into your house 24/7. Anybody who's tried to raise a kid and I've already seen, knows that. It's not an unfettered, positive thing. There are a lot of negative consequences to it. So anyhow, that gives you a little feel for the conversation that the book started. Yeah. And that's my friend, partner, almost son, Mike Bartner over there, who's hawking the book. He works for Slow Money. And actually, he showed me a picture last night of him at the Common Ground Fair with his parents when he was in a stroller when he was 2 years old. True story. If you think he's cute now, he was really cute when he was 2. All right, so let's see. So now, how am I doing on time? So I'm going to talk for 5 or 10 more minutes because I'm hoping. Are there a bunch of questions? There must be questions. I hope there are going to be a bunch of questions. So what are we doing? When the book came out, a bunch of people that I've known for a long time said, this is going to happen. This is going to be real. And I was like, what? So they started chipping in a little bit, and we created something called the Slow Money Alliance, which at the beginning was just a few people like George Seaman, the CEO of Organic Valley, and Greg Stelton. I'm saying food names that I think you all know, at least the companies. Greg Stelton, the founder of Odwalla, people like that, and people of a similar ilk from some of the investing side of things. And we all started talking about how would we do this, and the truth is we didn't really know. So I started going around the country talking, and a bunch of people said, well, we want to be part of this. And I said, be part of what? I don't know what it is. So to make a long story short, it's taken us a few years and a lot of talking to a lot of people around the country to figure out how to do this. Now, if you think about what the goal is, a system that would have millions of Americans investing a little of their money directly in local food systems within a decade, what are we going to need to make that happen? So we're going to need a bunch of things. The first thing that was obvious to us we're going to need is some pool of nonprofit dollars which could be focused on the food system and would not have to go back to shareholders, even with low returns. So in June, this last June in Shelburne Farms, we announced publicly for the first time something called the Soil Trust. So if you go on our website, slowmoney.org, you will see something about the Soil Trust. We're just setting it up. A few people have sent in money, but you're going to be hearing more about this in the next year. What's the idea here? The idea here is, again, very simple. It's almost embarrassingly simple. And it is, the way I like to think about it is 4 million, how many people here belong to the NRA, just so I know who I'm going to piss off before I say this. Okay. That's totally okay, but people always think when I say this that I'm against the NRA. I sort of am, but I'm not against people having guns. That's a whole other discussion. Here's the argument. If you and 4 million of your brethren in the NRA are sending $35 into the NRA a year to defend your rights to bear arms and other things that you believe in, why can't we get 1 million or 2 million Americans to send $25 in a year to the Soil Trust to build local food systems? So it's a simple, and these are not either or. There will be a few people who will do both, and that's a great thing. So, all right, so if you think about what would that pool of capital, why do we need that pool of capital? I told you at the beginning that only $50 million a year is being granted to sustainable agriculture by professional foundations in this country. And almost none of that, statistically, again, you could call it zero, is being invested. It's being granted. So it's being given to NGOs like MAFCA and other groups. It's a good thing. We're not against that. What we need is tens of millions of dollars a year at least of investment capital. And that's what the Soil Trust would be dedicated, providing investment capital of various innovative kinds in collaboration with local investors around the country. So let's give you one example. Let's just make believe that Slow Money Maine decided they wanted to start a Slow Money fund in Maine, which they may or may not decide to do. Let's say they want to do that. What if we could come in with $500,000 or $1 million from this Soil Trust, this national pool, created by lots of small donations, and say, we're going to guarantee the losses of this first fund. We'll guarantee the first 10 or 20% of the investors' losses. So those of you who know about finance know guarantees can be a very powerful way of getting the flow of capital to start in a new sector. So if you have more questions about the Soil Trust, I'll tell you more about that. So that's one of the things we're doing. Next, what are we doing? I didn't start with the most obvious. We're holding meetings around the country, some of them national, some of them regional. The meeting we had in Shelburne in June, we had 600. This is, for the kind of meeting, this is going to sound pathetically small in this setting, but for when you're talking about investing, if you can get hundreds or thousands of people together, you are doing something. And we had 600 people together in Shelburne Farms, Vermont, and this is everybody from just regular old folks who are worried about their money to billionaires and heads of foundations and heads of investment management firms. The whole gamut. We're all in this tent together. We had 26 small food enterprises presenting. Actually, Elliot Coleman, my friend, he was here somewhere in the signing letter. He came and spoke. We had a bunch of great people, that many of whom you would know on the food side speak, but then we had a whole bunch of money people whose names might not mean anything to you speaking about money. But if you go on our website, you can actually see 24 of the small food enterprises, the entrepreneurs speaking. And I don't know if any, Moon Milk was there. Moon Milk's there. And while I'm not sure, I mean, this is all happening as we speak, I don't think necessarily that Moon Milk got any money from that event, although I'll be hearing more about it. They've been going through a lot. 7 of the companies, as I said at the beginning, 7 who presented of those 26 companies have gotten over $1 million so far, and several have gotten money from people who weren't in the 10. I won't bore you with all the statistics, but it's a very exciting step for us. Money is starting to change hands at the national level, which is a really cool thing. But the ultimate objective is for all this to happen at the local level. That's the objective, because that's the only place, if you go back to the beginning of the talk, where the billions of dollars a year is going to come from. Because if you live someplace and you know something that needs to happen there, and you know that you can participate directly in it, and not only, let's say, get a 1% per annum return or whatever the financial return is, but you can save that farm or you can build that processing plant, you are receiving other benefits that no expert has to explain to you. And this is, again, if you go back to this thing about this remoteness from the consumer and the indifference, if you need a legion of experts to explain to you where your money is and what it is doing, I will almost guarantee you it is not doing what they say it's doing. It's just the nature of the system. If you take money away from direct relationships with people in real places and you send it into cyberspace or into huge pools of capital, it's going to be almost impossible to get it back to do what we want it to do. So let's figure out how to keep it from going there in the first place. Small amounts of it at first. I'm not talking about anything crazy, a few percent, 1%, until we get comfortable with it and we see what's happening. But I do think, the big story is that after a couple hundred years of invisible hand kind of thinking, we're reaching the end of this exhausted logic, but we don't have the alternative yet. And so it's a pretty scary place to be. Our wheels just keep spinning more and more, and we try to go faster and faster and more global, but there's no place left to go. So this is the beginning of, let's say, trying to step outside of that paradigm and really think in a radically different way. And I will say very quickly, again, it's not like we're the only people doing this. There's social investment firms and the Business Alliance for Local Living Economy and Slow Food, all of these different groups, and MAFCA. I mean, all of us are doing different pieces of this. But we are focusing in a certain way on the investment piece that is hopefully will add a lot to the party. Let's see, what else? Okay, what else are we doing? So the meetings. There are a whole bunch, meaning about a dozen, of local and regional slow money groups that are self-organizing right now, of which Slow Money Maine is one, and we are not controlling them from the central office. Whether we're supposed to or not, I can guarantee you we are not. We are trying to figure this out. This is a challenge for any movement like this where it's all predicated on local, but there is a need for some national catalytic activity. How do you do that? And obviously, if I were standing here right now going, okay, I want everybody to send in $25 to the Soil Trust, and yeah, sure, send some to the MAFCA too. It's kind of a funny thing. Well, I'm not here to try to take money away from MAFCA or any other local group, but there is clearly a need in this given how complicated our financial world has become, there is a need for some national catalytic activity, but the end result is that it's all going to be pushed down to local. I mean, it's all going to be set up so that it ends up catalyzing local. That's a long technical discussion, and maybe you'll ask me some questions about it. But the last thing we're doing, what's the last thing we're doing? We are actually exploring with Portfolio 21 and Calvert and RSF Social Finance, leaving out a few other groups, how can we set up new slow money products that would be, we would be involved in helping to brand and market, that would make it possible to use existing markets. I'll give you an example. What if there was a mutual fund right now that we could all invest in, called the Portfolio 21 Slow Money Fund? By the way, Portfolio 21 being one of the cool kind of niche social investment firms with maybe 400 or 500 million under them. What if there was a mutual fund that we could all invest in that had maybe 20 companies in it, each one of which, these are all public companies, had demonstrated some kind of a leadership commitment to organics in some way? It's going to be very imperfect, because there are going to be things in there, Whole Foods is going to be in there, and we can all debate whether we're happy with that or not. But whatever it is, it's going to be, let's say, an imperfect portfolio. But what makes it a slow money fund is that every investor who invests in there, by investing, at the front end and the back end, chips in a little bit of the proceeds of what they're doing into the Soil Trust. So it's connecting everybody who does that investment with this permanent nonprofit pool that we hope will have billions of dollars in it a generation from now. And again, just think about it. That pool is a permanent investment pool. It's investment capitalized with contributions, so all the money stays in it and is just continually reinvested for the benefit of future generations, soil fertility, small food enterprises, whatever. And what if that had billions of dollars in it? How helpful would that be? So So we're working with a family of professional investment entities to start designing slow money funds. That would, because not everyone's going to want to chip into the soil trust. Some people will. Some people say, look, I have $1,000 to invest, but I need to make 2% on it. Where can I put it? And I should be quick to add, there are some things you can do right now. If you go on our website, we have a button. It's just, we're acting as an information resource. There are products like the Carrot Project. Dorothy Supert is here somewhere. I'm not sure if she's in the audience. She is one of the entities through Slow Money that's gotten some money from some of our members, and she's making basically what you could call micro loans, small loans to organic farmers around New England. And you can go right now to her and give her $1,000. If you're a non-accredited investor, you can give money to the Carrot Project. So there are things you can do right now. There just aren't enough of them. And we're going to try to break through on the public equity side. You know, how can we create some things that would make it easy for large numbers of investors to participate? So I've gone on for too long. I hope I've given you an idea about who we are and what we're doing. I'm sure I've left out Mike.
Sign the Slow Money principles.
Mike is
slowmoney.org.
Okay, so Mike is reminding me. I kind of did mention one whole part of our little story here. I alluded to it quickly. We have something called the Slow Money Principles. What are the Slow Money Principles? They're basically the book in one page. There are 6 principles. I'm going to say the first one and the last one. You're going to see how non-technical they are. The first principle is we must bring money back down to earth. Talk about that one. Last principle is, it's kind of long, stick with me. Paul Newman once said, I'm just saying that in life we need to be more like the farmer who puts back into the soil what he takes out. That's a quote from Paul Newman. All right. I saw someone go like that. Had you ever heard it? Had you ever heard it before? So that, it happens to be, why do I even know about that quote? It was the last sentence in his obituary in the New York Times. A whole page, and they happen to end on that. So the principle says, our 6th principle quotes that, says, acknowledging the wisdom in these words, let us ask the following questions. First question, what would the world be like if we invested 50% of our money within 50 miles of where we lived? Now, to a group of investors, you say that, and like short circuits and all kinds of things happen. All right. 2, what would the world be like if there were a new generation of companies that gave away 50% of their profits? And that's a little bit of a riff on the Newman zone. Instead of 100%, 50%. We don't have time to talk about that. Last one, what would the world be like if we had 50% more organic matter in our soil 50 years from now? So the Slow Money Principles is just a very simple way of getting people to affirm something that is, to me, the most important thing that we're talking about, which is a new way of thinking about money and recognizing that we have to reconnect money to the soil if we're going to survive. So I would urge you, if you have any interest in what you just heard, if you go to slowmoney.org and click on the principles, I'd like there to be 1 million people who sign those principles. We're up to 12,000. We got a long way to go, but I hope some of you will go home after hearing this and click on that. And there's no money. You don't have to give any money or anything. It just means I believe that this is an important direction, and I want to see it happen. I'm willing to be counted. So I hope you will all consider that. And I think I should just end and receive questions. Come on, there must be questions. So, all right, I see you. I will repeat the question. Thank you.
Some people can sign if they want.
Mike is mentioning we do have a sign-up sheet for those of you who, let's say, are either closet Luddites or actual Luddites. You can come up here and you can sign the principles by giving us your name right here if you want. I saw a hand here and here, and we'll see how many we can get to. Yeah.
What percentage of your money goes to and how much of the CEO makes?
You're talking about the Slow Money thing itself. So we just hired a new executive director. So the question was, this was a radical question. It was, how much of your money goes to the things you're talking about versus your operations, and how much is your top paid person making? So it's kind of a funny question because we're so small. We just hired a new executive director who's basically started this month. He's going to be making, when we have enough money to pay him his full salary, $125,000 a year. He's making $75,000 a year right now, just to be completely transparent. Our annual budget for this, you didn't ask this question this year. This year we'll probably spend about $600,000 total for our whole operation. We're hoping next year it'll be $1.5 million. We're starting to grow and we're starting to raise money. Now, the second part of your question, I can't really answer it the way you asked it because we don't have money under management yet to invest. The Soil Trust is just starting. But the commitment in the Soil Trust is that all of that money, none of that money will fund the NGO. That will be investment capital which will be used to go into investment things. So if you put $25 in the Soil Trust right now, we do not touch it. It just goes into accounts as Soil Trust. We haven't quite figured out, probably something like we have to get to at least $1 million in there before we could actually start deploying it, just because of the cost of deploying the money. So I hope that's enough of an answer for this moment. Okay, yeah. Well, go ahead since you're doing it, and I'll get to him next. Shout it out, though. That's why I didn't. Did I really ask you for money? Just stay tuned. Just stay tuned to our process. We are creating these things as we speak. So if, I would never ask anyone to send any money until you're ready and feel completely comfortable it's going to be used right. So if you go, for instance, if you go on our website to the soil trust, if you join the alliance, that money is going to support our team of 4 people who are doing the work. So that's pretty straightforward. That's just an NGO looking to fund its budget of $1 million or $1.5 million. On the soil trust side, the systems are not in place yet, if that's what you're asking. Yes. So stay tuned. Over the next 3 to 6 months, we will see investment committees and structures in place that will tell you exactly how we're going to use that money. But the intent is clear. We're going to use it for guarantees, seed investment, and co-investment capital alongside local investors around the country. So just stay tuned. Yes.
What you're doing is all well and good, but we have a check money system. The Federal Reserve prints money out of trusses and charges us interest for it. Unless that system.
Remember, I have to repeat this.
Unless that system is, you won't. How can you change anything?
I'm going to summarize the question as saying you're using the same broken fiat currency Federal Reserve debt out of the thin air system. So how can you use those dollars to try to fix the system? The answer is I don't know. But no, I'm serious. I mean, this is, and when we have long discussions about slow money, people bring up local currencies and all kinds of other, let's say, you could argue more radical structural fixes of different kinds. All I know is small enterprises need capital to operate. You can't grow a business without debt or equity that I've ever heard of. I mean, we can't use local currencies to finance the growth of small food enterprises. So we got to use the crappy currency we have to do the right thing. That's my short answer. I don't have an answer for the entire Federal Reserve System.
It's a place to stop.
Well, go ahead.
What about a return to a real fractional reserve system where the bank is like George Bailey and he has 10% in silver and gold in the vault, and then it's a local bank, and then he makes loans out of
I'm in favor of it, of course. He's basically saying we need a whole new banking system where people actually have real assets in the vault and it's local and people know each other like it's a wonderful life. And I go, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but again, we're all trying to go down the same path together. I would say for the piece that we are talking about right now is if you look at a lot of the small enterprises that are here, we want to provide capital to thousands of these around the United States. So it's not either or. It's not either or. We need all of these different changes. I'm also in favor of local currencies. I mean, we need all of these. I would view these all as innovations that are moving us in the right direction. That's my general answer. Over here, yep.
MoveYourMoney.org.
MoveYourMoney.org. Another beautiful sister grassroots thing. So for those of you who haven't heard of it, Move Your Money is about taking your money out of the big money center banks and moving it into local banks. And there's a website, and it's, from what I can understand, very grassroots, and quite a few people are doing it. So yeah, that's another part of this, I would say, movement. Hold your thought for now, just because you had a chance, but I'll try to get back to you. Other
Over here.
right there, yeah.
You talk about an invisible hand, but isn't it true that the hand is anything but invisible? You're talking about financial institutions that overextended credit. You're talking about political institutions and financial institutions that ensure a maldistribution of income. Do you have any comments about that?
He said, I'll do a bad job of summarizing, the invisible hand is anything but invisible. It was a bunch of greedy bastards who did all kinds of horrible things. That's not the way he said it. He said it much better than that. And I would say, do I have anything to say about it? Yeah, I guess I would say it like this. I don't think scapegoating is the answer. I think that just makes us like those other people that a lot of us don't like. You know, everyone is in a bad system. The way I look at it is, it's not, everyone didn't wake up, very few people that I know wake up in the morning saying, I want to take advantage of other people today. Hardly any. You asked me, so I'm giving you my belief. I don't believe that most of the people on Wall Street are evil and corrupt people. There are some evil and corrupt people on Wall Street, just like there are some evil and corrupt people in the Republican Party and some evil and corrupt people in the Tea Party. And there might even be a few evil and corrupt people right here. But most people aren't. Most people are just caught up in a bad system. To me, the most fundamental structural problem of the system is this disconnect of our money from where we live. I want to give you one of my aha moments in talking about this over the last couple of years. So one day I was talking about E.F. Schumacher and Small is Beautiful and where some of the ideas came from, and I realized that those of us who were around in the 60s and 70s in the early phases of what's called environmentalism, one of the first things was there's no such place as a way. Remember, you saw the picture of the Earth rising over the moon, and it was like, oh my God, we're all on this planet. When you throw something away, it actually doesn't go away. It just goes outside of your view, but it's somewhere. You have to be responsible for it. And that was a big part of the beginning of environmentalism. And one day, in talking about slow money, I realized that to modern investors, there's no such place as here. We are taught as investors that we should just be thinking about asset classes and risk return and blah, 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 all these different things. It has nothing, all these abstractions. It has nothing to do with where we live. That system is corrupt. It's corrupting. It just causes people to make all these decisions which they're assuming are somehow leading to a common good, but they aren't. So that's a big question you asked. That's enough of an answer. These two over here. Yep.
Yeah, I have two questions. One is, if I'm an investor, and I'm not trying to be smug, I'm just curious. If I'm an investor, I'm looking for a return on my money. And you're talking about investing locally in food production.
How are you going to make any money?
Well, the thing is, in order to have food production, you need farmers who are skilled, and you don't always get your crop because of a lot of different reasons. So, and we're farmers, we're big farmers, my husband and I were dairy farmers, but the issue I have is, I would love to get somebody to invest in what you're talking about, but there aren't going to be returns in some years, and also, the more people you get involved in the food production and food processing, the less and less and less of a margin there is.
Okay, let me try to address that. So the question is, she's a farmer, and we would love to have more capital, but how can you didn't say this, how can you promise returns when some years we don't have a crop, et cetera, et cetera. So a bunch about the risks, and then there was another piece about how low margins already are, and concerns about the more, I'm not sure I really followed that one, but I'll just repeat it as I heard it, that there aren't enough margins in the system to allow for more investment capital. You didn't say it exactly right. And the answer is, we're not going to make very much money. The simple answer about all this is that even if you are the coolest investor on the planet, and you decide you want to create a diversified portfolio of small food enterprises, and it works, you're not going to make very much money. This idea, if you ask me how much, I don't know. I'll say low single-digit returns. So, but if you invest in any one thing, it's going to be very risky. So, if I live down the street from you and I want you to survive, and I get pooled money with 2 or 3 of your neighbors, and we put $50,000 into your farm, how risky is that? Super risky. Why would we do it? Because we live down the street from your farm and we don't want you to go out of business. If we did that 10 times, would we make money or lose money? Not sure. No, I'm serious. I don't mean 10 times in you. I mean in 10 farms like that. So, again, the short answer, just in the interest of time, if this is going to work, there's going to need to be lots of diversification and lots of cleverness about different ways of putting the money to work locally, and there will need to be lots of local intermediaries who are dedicated to helping us all do this. Everyone isn't going to do it one-on-one and have a happy outcome.
Well, just one other
quick follow-on thing.
Yeah, one other thing to tie it up is, it's a great idea, but it looks wonderful, but most people don't care what they do, and that's the reality. We're very unusual people that are here.
Right, but I actually disagree. You say most people don't care what they eat, locals are good idea and everything. And again, just in the interest of, I want to get to some other people, I'm just going to say, you have to just put your bet where you want to put it. I believe that this is the beginning of the sea change, not only in the way people think about food, but in the way they think about money. And I'll say one other quick thing on this. This is why I think slow money has created such a buzz. It's one thing to talk about slow food, which is very important. It's like, where does our food come from? To your point. Then you say, where is our money going? And you launch into a whole nother, much broader cultural discussion. And I will guarantee you this, there are millions of Americans who are freaked out about where their money is going. And to your point, maybe a lot more that care about where the food is coming from at this moment. But I believe this is a convergence that's going to become very powerful. But I need to.
I just want to say one thing.
Yep.
It's really important.
No.
If you can take this idea and you can make it practical to keep the farmers operational and it works, you've got something going. But if there's going to be
Right, she's just saying make sure that whatever we do is geared towards keeping the farmers going, that it gets all the way down to the farm level and is practical at that level. Yeah, okay. You've been waiting back there.
Here.
He's asking when we do have money to put out, how are we going to find the people? And the answer is a combination of things. Some of what we've done, we're bringing people together. We don't, at the national level, the $1 million that I talked about before, that just happened directly from individuals into food enterprises. We just brought the people together and literally put them in a tent. I did not make a single decision. Now, in that case, I did select the companies that were coming. But the goal is, as distributed a system as possible, having everything happen at the local level to the extent possible. That's the general answer I give you. So groups of people at the local level will be making all these decisions, not anybody in central location. Last question. Well, maybe we can get to, I don't know, a few more. Okay, so Russ, you scare me. Okay.
May I use the microphone?
Sure.
We have a functional local credit system that during the Depression, during the 08 Depression, made money and invested responsibly. Look into your local credit union, they already invest locally.
Thank you for that comment. Do you have, I see Ron Phillips wants to ask, okay, right there, yeah.
You're up.
I feel like what you're doing really requires inspiration. I heard some of what you said, and imagine there's some of your book. What are you constantly receiving inspiration personally, and anything you do to seek inspiration?
Well, I'll just repeat it. I was going to make a joke about it, but the question was, what am I doing to seek inspiration? Since an important element is both. Whoop. Not here. Let me just get rid of this. The answer is, I don't know how to answer that. I get a lot of inspiration from talking to people, and I could tell you lots of. Okay, here's one. I'm sorry, this is an answer. Odessa Piper, who is a somewhat well-known chef, maybe some people here even know her. She's originally from Madison, Wisconsin. Said during one of our meetings, we got into a discussion of what is local. You know, you could debate like what's slow and what is small and what do these words actually mean compared to what. And we got into a discussion, and it was a very robust discussion. She said, I'd like to offer this definition. Local is the distance the heart can travel. Now that, you could either react to that as, that's kind of mushy, or you could think it's really profound. It was after a whole day of talking about investing, so it seemed pretty profound at the time. So there's lots of inspiration from people who are coming, and then I would say just sort of the obvious things like E.F. Schumacher and Wendell Berry and Gary Snyder, and a lot of the same people that probably inspired a lot of people that are here have been very inspiring to me, and I'm always trying to stay open. So thank you for that question. Yep. Ron Phillips from CEI. Yep. So Ron's saying, given all the interest in healthy food at the national level right now, what about a tax credit, a federal tax credit to support this kind of investing? And the answer is, yahoo, great. As far as where we are right now as a fledgling organization, I'm thinking about this guy's question in the back about, like, you haven't even told us how you're going to invest the money yet. We're so young in our process that for us to get involved in lobbying at the federal level seems kind of crazy for me, for us as a little fledgling thing. If we scale at all the way we think we're going to, if we get hundreds of thousands or millions of people involved in this in some discernible way, we will participate actively, obviously, in lobbying and policy initiatives. But I think there's reason to think we would have some impact because we'd be representing businesses and investors. There'd be a new voice in the food movement. So, yes, sort of. Yeah.
Along the lines of thinking differently about money, why not advocate for a redistribution of wealth and income so farmers don't need an investor class to live off the land?
He's saying, why aren't you advocating for a redistribution of wealth?
And income.
And income. And the answer is, Lord, well, first of all, there's a group called the New Economics Institute, which used to be called the Schumacher Society. They merged with a group in England. They have a thing called the Great Redistribution, so I would urge you to go read their stuff. They are advocating for this on a pretty massive scale. I like to keep it simple. Again, this is one person's answer. The thing that I like about investing in small food enterprises, whether it be a farm or a company like High Mowing Seeds or just others, Organic Valley, even that's a co-op, whatever the form is, you're investing in an enterprise directly and sort of betting on the entrepreneur to help fix the system. And I like the idea of betting on tens of thousands of entrepreneurs rather than trying to get politicians to change big structural things. But that's just me. All right, are we done? Yeah.
So we're going to stop. I'd like to thank Woody for coming and getting us started here. And there is another conversation at 2 o'clock in the tent behind. And for all of you, many people who are MAFCA members, thanks for making your slow money investments in MAFCA through the years. So more books on the table. Woody's here for questions one-on-one. Come on up.